One of the most fascinating things about life is that we have a lot of things that seem impossible to explore. People have many theories regarding stars until we discovered technology to create different kinds of tools to help us further expand what we can observe in studying what lies beyond our reach. The infinite vastness of space. In this session, we will be studying stars and constellations. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to infer the characteristics of stars based on the characteristics of the sun, explain the relevance of constellations in everyday life, and compare astrology and astronomy. Knowing that the solar system alone has planets that are even greater in size than Earth and has more room for space debris, we can't help but ask, how would other worlds look like? When we look at the clear night sky, it would be filled with bright, shimmering stars. Who would have known that these glowing dots would be giant ball of gas similar to the sun? In fact, stars are son of other solar systems found light years away from the star system. What are stars? In a clear night sky in all regions of space, believe it or not, is filled with millions of it. However, due to the limitation of our vision and added pollution in the atmosphere, we can only see thousands of it in one time. With the limitation of our eyesight, we cannot even distinguish a real star from a planet, to even as simple as identifying their color. But due to the advancement in technology, we can now see a little bit clearer. But the problem is, how can we describe the characteristics of stars so that we can study and understand the other stars better? We refer to the characteristics of the closest star from our planet, the Sun. The Sun has the following characteristics: brightness, color, surface temperature, size, and composition. It's hard to compare brightness of stars as stars do not reside in the same spot. Sometimes, when we look at stars at night, stars of the same brightness might entirely be different in characteristics when they are studied in closer inspection. Sa lawak ng kalawakan, iba ang ating nakikita sa tunay nilang itsura at katangian. Let's take for example these blocks as different distances in space. Some areas may be near, while some resides very far. We will have these flashlights as different sized stars, which we will put in these blocks to simulate various distances in space. Ipaliwanag natin ang konsepto nito gamit ang maikling simulation. And to start, let's have this setting mimic the night. Notice that when stars of the same size are located in the same region in space, they appear similar in brightness. What happens when you place one of the stars a little bit farther? Notice what happened to the light? It seemed dimmer. That brightness is called the apparent brightness, or the brightness which was altered by distance as compared to its original brightness, or the absolute brightness. Look at this larger star. Its absolute brightness overpowers the smaller star. But when it is located way beyond, the apparent brightness of the same star seems similar to the smaller one. Ito ang epekto ng distansya ng mga bagay sa perception natin bilang nag-oobserba at nag-aaral sa mga ito. Dahil apparent brightness ang ating nakikita, madali tayong malinlang ng ating mga mata. In terms of color, the color of stars would really tell a lot about it. Let's have another simulation. Just like a bulb connected in a dimmer switch, you will see that when it is powered by a weak energy source, it seems dim and reddish. This means that in stars, when it is dim and red, the fuel of the star, mainly hydrogen, might have already been used up. That's why there's not enough energy to brighten it up. This also means that the surface temperature of the star would be much colder as compared to the orange color, which is a bit brighter. On the other hand, similar to our sun, stars that is yellowish in glow can be inferred as a middle-aged star, which means that it has more than enough energy or fuel to be bright enough and warm enough to sustain a livable planet like ours, the Earth. While younger stars or stars that contain high amount of hydrogen fuel would glow white, and the brightest and hottest color of star, blue. These stars would shine the brightest regardless of size, whether they are giant stars or dwarf in size. In addition, blue stars radiate off the charged surface temperatures. We wouldn't want to be near the hottest kind of stars as it would have enough energy to cook a planet. For years, we have no clue how stars are characterized, but with stronger telescopes, we can observe distant stars and infer characteristics based on the characteristics of our own star, the Sun. In the past, these stars were just observed to have recognizable patterns in space. Today, we have 88 constellations recognized by the International Astronomical Union regarded as boundaries of space. Ang mga pattern na nabuo gamit ang mga bituin ay tinatawag na constellation. How are constellations regarded in the past? In the early times, stars were just dots in the sky connected to form constellations that may be inspired by animals, people, which are usually gods and goddesses, and some were just plainly inspired by objects. But how were they able to provide us these patterns of stars? Constellations were constructed from individual stars, a few inspiration, and pure imagination. Aquarius, for example, was regarded by Babylons to signify rainy season, hence they called it the water bearer. Hindi lamang basta-basta nililikha ang konsepto ng constellation noong araw. Madali lamang gumawa ng base sa imahinasyon, ngunit laging may dahilan kung bakit ang isang constellation ay kinikilala. This would seem like a cross, but then, with the pigment of imagination, this pattern becomes Cygnus, the swan, a symbol of devotion, love, friendship, which can be inferred from its story or its origin. How come to this day, we see the same patterns at night? Did our ancestors saw the same patterns we see today? Yes they did. In fact, the stars we see today are in exact same spot as they were before. Why? It is because stars remain still in space. They don't seem to move even after a few thousands of years. And that is the very same reason why we still use the same constellations formed by our ancestors as astronomical map in the modern age. Gemini is a constellation from Greek mythology. Again, as I have said, constellations are from pigment of imagination. Gemini is actually Pollux and Castor, twins who share the same mother but have different fathers. Castor is a mortal son of a king, while Pollux is an immortal son of God. When Castor was about to die, Pollux, with his inseparable love for his twin, asked his father Zeus to share his immortality with his brother. This inspired the chief god to bring them together in eternity by turning them into a constellation. In the course of night, we can observe these constellations to seemingly rise and fall, similar to the motion of the sun. But the question is, do stars move? As I have mentioned earlier, stars don't move. However, our planet rotates in its axis and revolve around the sun. This gives an illusion that stars appear to rise and set, similar to the sun and the moon. Walang mabubong constellation kung ang mga bituin ay palipat-lipat sa kalawakan. If you see stars moving, those aren't probably stars, but must be something else. Cancer, or the giant crab, is a simple one. During the fight of Hercules with the Hydra, this crab pinched him in the toe. And that's that. Hera decided to put the poor crab in the sky as constellation. Hindi kailangan na maging komplikado ang pinagmulan ng isang constellation. Gayunpaman, meron at merong aral na mapupulot sa likod ng mga kwentong ito. Are stars in any way related to one another? Nope. We know that the sun is related to the planets as it holds them inside the solar system. But then, in terms of stars, they are too far away from each other to cause any interaction. Hindi dahil lumilikha tayo ng imahinasyong koneksyon ay may kaugnayan na ang mga ito. Dahil imahinasyon ang koneksyon nila, wala rin silang kaugnayan sa realidad. This constellation is Virgo, or the Greek god Persephone. Persephone is the goddess of spring season, but then, when she was kidnapped by Hades, her mother Demeter was left devastated, which ruins harvest season. With that, Hades was persuaded to allow Persephone to visit every 6 months. This brought back good harvest to the people every time when she was allowed to visit. With that, whenever this constellation appears according to the old Greek civilization, spring is about to come. These are just a few constellations and their relevance in the old times. Constellations serve as calendar, they signify seasons, they remind people of a few important lessons, they are used to point directions and serve as sky map. Iba-iba ang paniniwala at konsepto ng bawat tao rito. Gayon din ang ating imahinasyon at nakikita. People living in the northern hemisphere doesn't see the same constellations seen in the southern hemisphere and vice versa. People living in the southern hemisphere cannot see nor use Polaris or the North Star to point the north direction. Ito marahil ang dahilan kung bakit maaari nating sabihin na ang kwento ng tatlong hari at ang bituin na gumabay sa kanila o ang North Star ay matatagpuan sa Northern Hemisphere. As our imagination run wild, constellations as pattern of stars is not enough. We can form more figures from constellations as asterisms. Imagination is just the limit. Astrology is there to remind us about our journey as a species. The zodiac, which was believed to dictate and directly impact our life, along with other constellations, are now regarded by astronomers as a sky map, a useful one in preparation for the next frontier. That's it for now. I hope you learned something from this video. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you again in the next one.